Now we're live. Just waiting. All right. Wonderful. We are all systems go. Blake, welcome back. My most favorite, active, longest known mentor. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thanks, Gary. Always a pleasure to be back. Love supporting the community in any way. But yeah, so where to start? I guess background is sociology, socioeconomic theory, but I turned that into a career in family office, basically investment in the investment field around emerging technologies, family office, private equity, and venture capital, kind of all of them in different capacities. So right now I wear two hats. One of them, and I've done advisory stuff, and can go into all those fun details as well about industries and just basics around it. A lot of times it's been around strategies and operations and kind of future forward of where things are going and how to then structure and be strategic around the pathways, expanding on a global scale, global environment, and also understanding the dynamics of teams and creating, developing, sustainable businesses. Really, that's always the goal. And yeah, so then one of the hats I wear, I have an investment group based in Singapore, and we scale companies to essentially go public. And then I also, the other hat I wear, I have an animation studio, and that's quite fun. Where, let's see, we created a hyper efficient workflow for the animation industry, kind of taking off the shelf tools and redoing the workflow to make it where you're working in context. We kind of mashed live action with animation together to do this. That was all without AI. We are implementing AI and tool sets into it, and also building out some amazing AI products, if you will. One of those we're calling authentic engagement AI. So imagine interactive characters, basically any character, them coming to life in front of you and being able to have not just conversations, but even perform in front of you, kind of a bespoke offering there. That's the goal. That's where we're going with it. We're going to be releasing a bunch of stuff for SIGGRAPH, which is at the in about 2 weeks now, actually. And yeah, everything is about extension of story and how to tell amazing stories along the way with the animation studio. So I think that's about it. What do you think, Gary? Is
I
that
think
good?
that's awesome. I
It's
love
always
getting.
different. So,
Yeah. That's one of the most fun things about having you back on a consistent basis and other mentors like Craig. It's being able to kind of like highlight how it's a journey and you're continuously moving forward and there's all these new, opportunities and challenges that come with that. And speaking of that, getting ready for SIGGRAPH in a couple weeks, what are you doing differently for this new convention versus the previous ones, like that you're able to apply the lessons from the past too and help it be a little bit more less stressful or more together, more whatever it is. I'd love to hear that so others can also benefit from the fact that experience leads to more opportunities and success.
yeah. I think the stress is always going to be there. To be honest, maybe because it's more about processing and handling the stress. It's the same kind of stress load. It's just how to deal with it. But don't see that as being like a major issue or anything. But the one thing that we do have the philosophy of is to basically always have something different, right? Always have new things that we are showing off. So every time that someone comes and sees us, because we're at the HP booth this time with SIGGRAPH alongside with NVIDIA, we'll be on panels as well. There's a Unreal meetup group that we're doing an event, kind of an ancillary SIGGRAPH event too, and some other kind of instances that are coming up along the way. So we're just showing things off that are new. One of those is this essentially a new. We had shown off an MVP version of the authentic engagement AI before. Now we're going to have a productized version of that where people are. It's going to be that much more engaging. What one of those special things is that we're putting vision on it. So we're using one of our characters, which is named Ruby, and some others, but Ruby will be able to actually see you. And the same way that when I'm talking to the camera right now, you'll see me gaze off because for whatever reason, right, Gary's little box is up there. So I try to make eye contact with him, but it's the same thing, right? We're looking around. Everyone has different movements, right? But also not just seeing, okay, this is a blue shirt and this is a blue hat. Um, Actually seeing what someone's emotional state might be, and how to then our character Ruby is then empathetic to where that person might be, um, tone, everything. So all these components are actually kind of like human nature, that we're putting into a more engaging AI activity entertainment tool. So yeah,
It's awesome. I love it.
yeah,
We got a fun question so far. From Andre. Andre's asking, how many hats is too many hats? Is there a point where you kind of get diminishing returns? That's a very common struggle for people just
yeah,
starting out. Yeah.
yeah. I think if they're complementary, it all makes sense and it all works. I think, excuse me. I think that when it sounds like someone is doing, when it just sounds busy, when it sounds too much, and also you have to also kind of look into yourself, saying like, okay, I want to do all these things, right? But then there's blue ocean, right? And think of yourself as being a strategy of like your own business entity, right? Do you want to go after every single thing, right? Or do you want to go after the things that are going to unlock you to do other things and kind of step, kind of like, move forward, right, with one or two, right, and then expand from there to more, and what allows you to do those things essentially, right? So I think that's actually a question for yourself. You don't want it to sound like you're distracted. So like you say you're a person who is always coming up with a new startup idea and you're trying to raise money on that, right? That can kind of give you diminishing returns because it's like, okay, it's just around, the last one didn't work out after 6 months, or you gave up, after 3 months, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're able to execute and you're able to accomplish, then, and you're the type of person that's able to do quite a lot, then don't let that also pull back from your ability to do multiple things, right? Some people actually do better when they have multiple things going on. I've had instances throughout my life that have been that way, where quite a few, but they were all being executed on, whether it was from volunteer work that was in addition to just normal career stuff as well. So yeah, I would actually you should ask yourself that question, right? If what you are doing is a distraction, right, of what you really want to accomplish, and only you know what that is going to be too. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've experienced that too, where, and I say this often actually. I mean, Craig and I were talking about this last week. The fact that the more you're putting yourself out into different situations, living your life, whether that's like, engaging in hobbies with, like other people or yourself, or, pursuing school and your education in different ways, or just, doing run of the mill, like, errands out in the community and just, being around people. But also, like, again, like volunteer work is wonderful. All these different situations, these scenarios gives you access to meet new people and build authentic relationships with others who you can help and who'd likely be willing to help you in some way, and just makes the your community around you stronger, and it gives you also a better chance of innovating because you're witnessing how different people approach things, how they think, what they, experience, and you're experiencing so many new things in different ways all the time. So I really love that, and I think it's really good. Kind of touching on that, like, what's your methodology in regards to managing projects, and how do you apply that to your personal life outside of just like professional projects? Because you're talking about, you got to ask yourself those deep questions about, is this working towards my goals? Is this benefiting me in the way that I want it to versus not, or being a distraction? So what's like your methodology look like when it comes to those questions?
yeah, no, that's really interesting. I always think of it, what's the best way to stair step, right? So, or I always go back to the crawl, walk, run scenario. So kind of really listing that out, and then it's also what's a low hanging fruit, right? If by going this way, right, there's blue ocean and then there's boiling the ocean, right? And there's also red ocean. It's funny you bring up Craig. These Craig talks about these things all the time, and so, but it's basically it's saying like, okay, what are the next steps to be able to launch this, to be able to turn it into something that then is a rollout, whether that is a product itself or whether that is trying to get work around service type work, if you will. What is it that your goals are, right? Because there's so many times where people will ask, like, anyone, right? Like, how is your company going to make money, right? And a lot of times companies don't have that answer, right? They're like, well, I built this thing, right, to accomplish this other thing, but it might actually not have the ability to sustain itself as a company. So it's peeling back all the layers of like what are the structural things that allow and enable you to have a sustainable company, right? To get to a point, and yes, you might have these dreams and desires and fantasies of where the company is going to be. It's a unicorn, and suddenly we're cranking in this amount of money, right? And it's not just about the money, but it's the revenues that enable you to do these other products that you've been wanting to do. That's a neighboring, it's a sister project, it's whatever it is, or it's just to enhance the one that you're trying to do. So what I would say is that it's again, going back to the crawl, walk, run scenario, right? It's kind of like if the juice is worth the squeeze, and really seeing if this is that there is a risk, right? Everything is a risk, right? Startups are risk. Talk about all the failure rates of startups, et cetera. But it's really kind of understanding like, hey, is this intuition, right? Do your research, do your understanding, and then kind of like just look at yourself, yourselves, right? Because you should have a team. Look at yourselves in the mirror and say, is this really the route that we need to be taking? Is this going to enable us to do the other things that we set on this journey to accomplish, right? Because every step can be a misstep, or it can be the step in the right direction for success, right? And if it is a misstep, how do you then go that path? And then what are the options and opportunities that you can also go in, and you're not hitting dead ends when you go along the way.
Yeah, that's very well said, and it kind of again aligns with a lot of other conversations we have. And part of that is also taking the time to understand what stage you're at with your product or your service, your company, but also yourself as a career professional, right? Like where are you in your career? And if you're an entrepreneur, you want to have a business, or you're starting a business, well, where are you in your journey as an entrepreneur in regards to the resources you have, the connections you have, the influence you have, and all these different factors that are going to give you the means to pursue this next, step or open new doors, right? And so that's really important to be aware of. And that kind of touches on another thing, documentation. So I mean, first I'll say that there's so much anti-documentation mentality in startups like across the board, and this has been like the way it's been for the last 20 years since I've been involved in it. Everyone's like, oh, that's so corporate, that's so corporate, that's what, like, corporations do. Don't do that, it's a waste of time, fail fast. So I'm curious, in your opinion, where is how does documentation fall into the process, the methodology here, for you, and where do you think others kind of go wrong with it, and what they can lean into more to utilize it in a much more effective way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say documentation is, yeah, I mean, I think always understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it and having some sort of repository for it, right? Whether it's kind of like you're setting it up sort of like a journal, like kind of like an ongoing, this is what is happening, this is where we're going, to then go back to like essentially meeting minutes that you need to do anyway in a company, should be doing regularly in a company. But it goes back to like any key decisions that are happening, you need to make those documents, and put them down. The other thing too is the validation around it as well, right? Kind of goes back to the previous kind of part of this question, right? Is where having validation for what you're doing, right? And then also understanding that, okay, we're going to do this build, right? Get validation, but we might have to tear it down again and rebuild to have it into the next phase of the project or product, right? So there's that element, and that's all documentation as well. Again, to your point, Gary, it's extremely key to be able to go through it, right? Because also you want anyone to be able to go back, right, when doing due diligence on you, say it's for fundraising or even selling the company, or even just having say your CTO, right, or say your CFO, your COO, whomever that is, right, is now delegating projects that they're doing to other people, right? And because you're scaling and growing team, all that documentation needs to be there. And if it's not there, then you're going to have to go back, and it's a huge heap of work. And every single time, a new person comes on, they're going to be like, "Wait, what's going on?" And then it's kind of a game of telephone, because if you suddenly have a director level position beneath you, and then there's a managerial position beneath them, it's three rings away, if you will. Every single time they're going to have to explain it, and they're not hearing it from that original person, and that can be detrimental to the growth and scale of a company. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
that's why.
think the point of it is like basically making sure that you're able to grow, right, and do all the things that are necessary to enable that to happen. So yeah,
Yeah, and having that documentation, like you said, like it's like it starts like at the earliest stage, just being very clear about where you are, right? And what is going to be the most important things to focus on, where your priorities need to be to move forward in the most effective way with the least risk, right?
yeah,
And be able to replicate that. And this too, like, when you're early stage and you have like, an MVP or you're working towards that MVP, there's so many assumptions that everyone has, and you need to test and you need to go through a series of science experiments to figure this out and know if you need to like make full scale pivots or start to make little refinements, or you can start optimizing and leaning into these things. But yeah, if you don't have that documentation, how are you going to replicate any of that? How are you going to be able to assess any of that in a meaningful manner? You're just going to be going by vibes and guessing, and that's going to lead you astray in most cases. Yeah.
yeah. And
So,
also with the level of technology that's out there now, right? It used to be a lot more like hunch based, right? Because it's just based off the information that you feel intuitively or you've researched and all these other things. But now information is just so accessible, and also technology being able to compile that information all together to then get yourself working and iterating to a point. Um, yeah,
so we got some people in the community that are have been asking about, they're on the technical side and they want help finding the non-technical co-founder to make sense of, what their vision is, and build a business around this incredible product that they've created with the
yeah,
technology. What's your recommendations for seeking out the non-technical co-founders and presenting to them so they understand how to, like, really build a business around what you're trying to do? But also, what do you caution in regards to jumping a little bit too quickly into working with someone like that? What would you like kind of point out as possible pitfalls or ways to kind of like make sure that you're going to be entering a long-term relationship with the right person?
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. It's been for such a long time, right? A lot of people are like, yeah, I need a technical founder, I need a CTO. And I think that's really interesting because sort of like when you start to see like shifts in sort of like where people are at in general, you start to see a really magical kind of companies that come out of it. Um, it's kind of like it's sort of like an outlier situation that's turning into more and more common because I have heard it a bit more now. I mean, essentially, you do want someone who is knowledgeable um, on technical side of things, right, and can explain technical aspects of things. There's a whole swath of industries, right, that technology is in, right? Like literally, just everything is technology at this point. I use the example of like Domino's is now considered a tech company, not a F&B company. Funny enough, because of all the data that they're pushing around and doing, it's quite impressive. But back to the question. I would say that you need to find someone who understands what you are trying to do. Also, the vision as well, right? You can be a technical, like whether you're programming, whether you're building it, engineering it, whatever that might be. But you do need that type of person that can also distill it down and explain it, right? To then also go after and understand where the needs are to do this, and then it was what I even said before about productizing whatever you're doing, to make to generate revenues to keep the company afloat, to then be doing and continuing on the journey that you're trying to go after. So to find them, that's a whole other thing. It just really depends. There are a lot of meetup groups, right? There's examples of, do shameless plug on this, for like 805 lunches, where I know a lot of business relationships have been established there. Not just friendships, right? But saying like, hey, I'm trying to do this, and I'm looking for X here, and someone says who's not even they might not be there, right? But they're like, hey, this person knows these types of people that could actually go develop that out, or hey, they know this team that can go do this and would want to partner with someone like you that is trying to do this, right? I've known someone who actually at the lunches and other groups that are like this too, right? Because I know not everyone is in the area, but they go there and they see the person who's putting it together. He often knows, she they often know whomever is in that space that you're trying to get into and you're trying to do, and they'll be able to do some matchmaking. And there's some great groups that are out there that can dive into that too. So that's probably not a full answer to it, but I do think that it's really extending your network out there. And also, you can't, because you're going to go into this long-term relationship with them, you have to be pretty secure. So I would definitely say date them, quote, date them, right? And get a real understanding, and list out the objectives and goals that you're trying to do, right? And say, this is what I want to do. What is it that you want to do and you want to accomplish? And just make sure that they align. Doesn't have to be super, super mechanical in that sense, but get the feel and get the vibe for who that person is in an energy way, and how they look to accomplish the goals that you're looking for. So
I love it. And definitely, look for other opportunities in the community to just spend time with each other, like whether those again are more business oriented, professional networking type of events, but like in that route, hackathons, startup weekends, those like weekend incubator kind of things, or day incubator programs that universities or other, organizations might be putting on. We've done those in our past too. I would definitely recommend engaging in those, and it gives you a good sense of what it's like to be on a team with these people. And you shouldn't be working on your own ideas, like come up or something that you're already working on. Just, join another team, see what it's like to be part of someone else's team. Or if you do have an idea, like a fresh one, just for the experience, come up with something wacky, something that like, it's just for fun to just build out and do together and see how that goes. Yeah. All right. We got Eki says documentation is very important. It's what let a company grow without the founder being the only place the context lives. Yes, like that's super important too from like a risk standpoint as well. You never want these things to only exist in the minds of, the founders, or even like certain like, teammates. You want everything documented so everyone has access to that. Absolutely. Every decision
even
made. Yeah, yeah.
just on that, like, because I was reading these and I thought it was really interesting. So thank you to the person sending that. That's very long. I know that's not their name. Um, but even if it's there's been instances, right? I've gone back with IEL, my animation studio. And we've gone back and it's like, remember when we did this? And there's like this deck of what we were doing back then, and then it's like, yeah, and then you can see in it like these portions that then evolved into this huge other thing that we started to do separately, right? And that's really really fun to do as well. It's like going back into that box you had when you're in third grade, right? And you're like, oh, I remember making this diorama for Mrs. Whomever's class. I won't say my school teacher because that might be a password answer for a security question in the future. Anyway, but yeah, just those documentations is really interesting, and also, as they're saying, right around just brainstorming moments should be documented because you never know where they turn into variants and things like that too. 100% agree. 100% agree. And also, what's great about it too is that you can take a lot of these because of all the AI tools that are out there, and you just put them into something where it can just do the bullet points that comes off of it too. So I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And yeah, I wasn't gonna even try to pronounce that name. My speech impediment. So I just went with Eki. But yeah, so Shrad asks, has Blake seen any startups or sustainable businesses do really well with cost-effective offshore talent? If so, where and when does it work best?
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few companies, even ones that Gary and I know, that even do that with offshore talent. Um, I think this is all just really depends on the industry, if you're able to do it, right? If that actually is cost effective, right? If I'll use this as an example, is that if it takes longer in bandwidth and hours of explaining, right, to a team that is might not necessarily be nearby, and there's cultural barriers or language barriers, things like that, which I've no, I'm not disregarding at all of that being a potential to do, but those are the things that can be in the way, right? In the world of animation, there's certain areas where there's context such as is not understood because there's comedic timing that has to be like literally animated in with how the joke is also timed too, and what the movement and looks like on screen is very important to the humor in it, right? And if it's going to take them like 10 cycles to get to that completed side, and it might take your team 3 cycles, right? That's say domestic wherever you're working from, and it might be 10 or 20% more the cost, right? But that's also time that you're looking at too. So like going back to it is just take the variables, peel them back, and see where that impact might be, right? If you've never done it before and you're just trying this out, I would definitely see like how much and how long would it take you and your team to do this, or bring on one person or 2 people, or are you going to need to have this massive team that is more laborious, right, to even do what you're trying to do as well. I think it's one of those things where you kind of also don't know until you're inside of it, right? But it does work. And when does it work? It's when I kind of was just going into it a little bit, right? But it's when you need a huge laborious project kind of done. Doing more smaller scale things, it just depends. It also depends on how you're finding them, right? Are you building the team yourself by putting a network together like on Fiverr, or are you seeing someone who is basically a middle ground person that is working with them as well? So
Dr. Paxmore always with the fun commentary. It takes one woman 9 months to make a baby. It takes 9 women 1 month or something like that. So yeah, kind of touching on the context again of like, or the advice to properly establish the context for the project and the factors at play is going to really like, help allow you to make the most informed decision. Because yeah, in some situations, it doesn't matter if you have more people helping out, you can't expedite some things, but in other cases it can. The other thing too, like, touching on that, is, there's a lot of different people who offer this sort of support with offshore teams, and take the time to vet them as well, right? Like, figure out who's leading the team, like not just who is running the whole agency or firm, but look at who the project managers are. Take time to meet those project managers that are going to be doing the day-to-day kind of like, communications and overseeing and delegation of everything and really making sure that the team is doing what they need to be doing. And also don't rush into doing that if you don't have the proper documentation.
Hmm.
And documentation, would be if let's say you want to build out software, right? You've got your user stories, you've got your wireframes, and those wireframes need to be every screen, every UI state on every screen, as complete as possible in terms of the content and the way they should function, attached to the information architecture, attached to the product specifications, and then show that in user flows. And if possible, I would even recommend doing like a clickable prototype first, using all that before you then start shopping around to find people to work with you. And that could be said, Blake could probably touch on that in regards to like animation in the context of that, where there are like certain like storyboards and wireframes of certain types as well. But in my experience, trying to get someone to like work with you without the proper documentation, it's a whole headache because then you have to go back and forth and try to communicate and demonstrate what's in your head for this thing. And then if they sign off on, yeah, we'll build this, how are you going to hold them accountable to what they build if it isn't what you want, right? Because you don't have the blueprints that they were following, right? So, Blake, do you have any experience with that or recommendations, advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think again overall it goes back to, yeah, it's there's a whole slew of things, right? And Dr. Paxmore is always eloquent with his peanut gallery. Always love it. No, I sincerely do. But and that was even one of those things where it's like at a certain point you can't throw more people at something to make it go faster, right? It actually can make it more encumbered and things like that too, right? So it's understanding what 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 you're trying to get out of engaging with an offshore team in general, and if that outcome is going to be right for you. I think it just goes back to everything where it just comes down to getting into the mindset and understanding of unpacking and dissecting and seeing what tools are out there at your disposal, right? There's people are able to accomplish things more with vibe coding than they've been able to, at any point in their life before, right? Where non-technical, non-programmers are able to get into it. Not saying it's a whole thing, but what they're able to do is iterate into something and get into cycles where it's them spending their own time to get to something where it can be demonstrative for a more technical team and more technical group to then take that and then polish that into the product that you're looking for later on, right? So if anything, you're getting closer to like that 80% and then focusing on the 20. I say this, right? 70 to 80%, then you're looking at accomplishing the next 20 to 30%, but you need to do that in increments, whether that's a 20%, then a 9%, then a 1%, because it really is the final 1% is where a lot of people start to give up, or even the last 5%, right? Or any sort of combination of that. But getting to that point where you're able to actually polish something with the right team, and that could be an overseas team, but you need to do something that's an in between because they can't just go off the basics of like I think what you were getting at, Gary, right? Where it's like it can't just be like, hey, I want to do this, and they're like, okay, pay us, $250,000 and we'll give you an MVP in 6 months. We'll see you later, right? That's not the best way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anything you do to eliminate any opportunity for misinterpretations of what you want is going to be invaluable to getting what you want. But also, again, when it comes to holding them accountable, right? If they deliver something that's off or that doesn't align with the blueprints, then you can hold them to, make sure that they go back and make it right on their costs instead of you having to pay them. And you should also always be using a contract that explicitly says that's what's going to happen. So yeah, really important stuff. Dr. Paxmore
And to
says,
Dr. Paxmore,
yeah.
I'll say this: when you get a vibe code, Dr. Paxmore bought to just be doing this on a regular basis, so you don't have to do it anymore.
No, we need the authentic thing. This is the humanity that I live for. Dr. Paxmore says, I would caution vibe coders professionals will have to reverse engineer and build your app from scratch 99% of the time because the vibe code is bad.
Hmm.
Dr. Baxter also said, "How do you know I'm not a bot?" Might be a good bot. But yes, but yeah, so that is important too. And I think this too kind of touches on understanding where you are in your journey with the product, and then, just as an entrepreneur, don't be afraid to have to rebuild something. Because
Hmm.
when you're first starting out, the goal is to validate that the product wants your, or excuse me, the market wants your product. And you can do all sorts of market validation showing that, oh, there's a TAM of 70 billion people spending money, or people spending $7 billion across this. And they're doing all this, and there's all these other competitors that are making so much money right now in this, right? That's easy. Anyone can do that over the course of like maybe like an hour now with like AI research too, right? Or AI research tools helping you pull like, documentation and whatnot. What you can't do very easily is prove that there's people willing to get your product, buy your product, and use your product. And it's fine to do that with vibe coded stuff if it works well enough to validate those assumptions. But then to build a sustainable, viable business around that, yeah, Dr. Paxman's right. It's going to take a lot more effort to make sure that all the potential security risks are in place, all the functionality, there's not like certain bugs that you didn't account for at scale when, okay, you go from like 10 customers to 100 customers or something else like that, right? So I'm
Yep.
curious, Blake, your opinion, like when it comes to like just entering the market and focusing on what matters most, what are your like core things in the process methodology that focus on to make sure you're building something, and building something that a business can be sustained by.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, into what Doctor Paxmore is saying, it's 100% that, right? Like I firmly believe, right, is that like if you're just leaning on vibe coding yourself and you have no technical ability to go beyond that, then yes, it's going to be stripped down. That's why I always go into it's like it's getting. Have used this before, but this example is, I think, really just one of the easiest. It's you can have six people in a room, or even just this quote room that we're all in right now, and I can explain a scene to you, right? So there's a wooded forest with grand tall trees, and there's a lake in the center with a clearing off to the side. And in that clearing, there's a cabin, and there's smoke coming up from the cabin. It's at dusk, right? Starting to have a twilight kind of feel, and there's a deer drinking from the water, and there's a trickling brook that's right next to it, and across in the distance there's menacing eyes that start to appear, right? Everyone has a different vision in their mind right now of what that looks like, right? Because I didn't say any style, even if I said, oh, it's a painterly style, right? Or, oh, this is a cartoon style. Oh, it looks like Bob's Burgers, right? Then, okay, that's very specific, right? And that's why you can get all this AI, trash that comes off that's like, oh, yeah, Gary looking like Bob's Burgers, but, that's someone else's IP. So can't do that with me, right? It's that's what AI is allowing people to do that didn't have the ability to literally paint that scene and put it down in front of people and say, this is what I've been looking at, right? This is what I've been wanting. So even if it is stripping down, it's accomplishing more things for you to get to the point where you can literally point to someone, this is exactly, or this is a iteration of what I want, and to build it from there, right? So it goes back to offshore teams or just your technical teams of who you're dealing with, and what that looks like. So yeah, um, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, we got some questions from some youngsters in the streams. Lenny asks, I'm 17 years old, still going to high school, and programming React for the last 3 years. 30 minutes ago, Gary reviewed the landing page of No Web, which is my first project that I can really see have potential as a startup. Now I'm mostly finished with coding. The community is an important thing as they should create templates and expand the variety of them. So in his MVP, it's a way for people to very quickly design websites and launch them, and they host them, and they provide all the templates, and the templates are in part created by the community, adding different like new ones as they go. Okay, so currently I'm struggling to get some beta testers. Since I'm 17, I have to wait some months to register as a business, so no web is free until then, free to use. My plan is to make social media where I explain the problems I had and why no web will fix them to get customers till it's paid. They are beta testers. Is this the right approach? Should I get an investor? Do you have any other tips? I don't know if I should neglect school for this. I would really like you to give me some tips and help me to continue to build this the right way.
Yeah. I'm definitely not going to be in the realm to tell you what to do in your life, right? And say like, oh, screw school, just quit, go about this, right? No, but I think a lot of the things that we've been talking about this up to this point are contextually, appropriate for here, right? It's understanding and getting. I would say go after as much validation in the marketplace that you're trying to like impact and see where it is, right? The difficulty now with, let's call it, widgets or just things that are tools like this is that there is such a huge swath of these that are out there, right? Are you actually making an impact where another company like a Canva can't come in and just take out your entire marketplace, right? Are you niche based because you're kind of small startup? That's usually where a lot of people need to go first is niche based. Not saying that everyone does, but when there are like large competitors that are out there, right? What is your competitive advantage, right, versus the your competition that already has, a name, place, and everything like that. In industry for like entertainment, I see a lot of companies come forward. It's like, hey, here's this amazing tool. It does all these amazing things, and it's what hasn't been able to be done before, right? That inside studios they've had to build their own bespoke and proprietary systems and et cetera. And now here's a widget that you can just download and it accomplishes that thing, right? But then there's an entire training element and training stack that has to go along with it, where getting a team of say 500 within a company to take something on, that's a huge step forward that they have to look at the training, right? So what is it that you're actually accomplishing at the very end of the day? Like in this case, it sounds like it's more of like let's call them mom and pop style businesses where they're much smaller, but they do need a website that is going to accomplish what they're doing, right? There's Wix, and that's a very old school one, etc. But what is it that you're actually doing? And then when it turns it to getting an investor, it depends on what your capacity is, right? Do you know people that would put money in, and is it something that you feel that you need that to then scale, or do you need to create and put that time and energy into validating the product, making the product the very best it can be, so then you can get a better valuation and say like, look, here's revenues, right? I know that you're going after free for a few months, right? Go free, get your validation there, and then move to others and others that it's turning into revenues that are around it, and then you can show the scale and growth that's happening, right? When it goes from free to being paid, right? Are people seeing still value in what that paid product is as well? Trying to think what else is here. Yeah, yeah, I see that it's beta, and so it's an early stage there. I would go after whatever your market is, right? Go after them directly, whether that's through LinkedIn, whether that's direct contact through their Instagram, right? Their websites, just calling them up, whatever that might be. I don't know where that is actually going to go for your, in your strategy overall, but definitely have a strategy and utilize tools out there to help you, create a strategy too. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of this is so important for you to start with, and like Dr. Paxmore over on Twitch is like asking, so it's like Squarespace. Why not use Squarespace? And this touches on what, Blake, we were just talking about too. It's like there's so many in the market already that are doing such a similar thing that you need to figure out how to do it in a unique way for a niche, a very specific niche. And you need to define that niche by not just the demographics, but by their psychographics. And we touched on this like during the workshop for the landing page and pitch deck reviews. Like the psychographics are what really matter. It's understanding and defining and understanding their culture, their values, their motivations, their behaviors, and the why behind all of that, and how that aligns with the brand that you're building, the product that you're providing, the services that you're providing, the way you're doing that. So everything's in alignment, and they're seeing you as this thing they've been waiting for because it's touching on all these very emotional aspects of who they are and what they represent, in addition to providing with the type of enjoyable experience that they have been craving, and also the benefits they need. So all these things need to be in alignment, and you definitely need to like, yeah, hone in on what that niche is and go after them, like Blake's saying, and figure out, if that's even the right niche or not, and if you're doing things the right way to align with those people and all that, right? Um, I will say, like, because I'm a little bit more gruff than you, Blake. No, don't stop focusing on school to do this
Oh
because
no, no.
yeah,
For me, I'm just telling them not to. That I'm not going to tell them not to focus on it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I mean, you should definitely focus on it, but don't make it a priority given how many assumptions you have and how many different steps are still required for you to work through and accomplish before you can even make that decision, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, you have a lot of work ahead of you, and making this a priority at that time is just going to likely lead to failure because you're getting too attached to certain things, probably from an emotional standpoint, or maybe a need standpoint, because, everyone has, like, a desire to be successful and a desire to make money, but also there's many with a deep need. Like, I'm not making enough money at my job. I'm struggling. Life is scary and I need more money to do this, right? And it seems like being your own boss, having your own business, a startup, right, is the way to do that and accomplish that very quickly. But in most situations, it's not. It's likely much more productive for you to focus on a career path at this stage to make more money and figure out how to do that with your skills than trying to be your own business, especially if you can code, right? It's so much easier for you to find another agency, another firm to work with, especially in your local community or maybe abroad. Either one, there's different opportunities because of what your skill set is. And you can build up the pay rate you're getting through continuously finding better employment or, working through the same employer and getting, raises. And if you're not getting a raise, find a better employer, right? But that's so much easier than trying to figure out how to start a business, build a product, bring it to market, and then figure out how to make it sustainable to pay your bills and then pay the bills of other people you bring into your team, right? So there's a lot there. And yeah, I think Blake, you gave a lot of wonderful starting points to start focusing in on how to move forward with this and kind of like figure out those answers.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get accuracy around it, right? But it's like when Mark Zuckerberg, quit, right? And he's an anomaly, right?
Yeah,
Like
yes.
there are the anomalies that are out there. It's like Bill Gates, when he quit, right? When Zuckerberg, when he quit, and there's blah blah blah, like all these others. Um, and but those are so rare, right? But yeah, when Zuckerberg left Harvard, he had raised $500,000, right? And this $500,000, many like 20 over almost 25 years ago, I guess now, right? Um, that was very key and very strategic, and that's a ton of money for that time, right? And what they were doing, and it was a huge risk too. But yeah, yeah. Um, take that all with a grain of salt.
Awesome. All right. So another youngster. Hi, Blake. I'm 15 and building North Star, a platform to help people discover and manage grants, accelerators, hackathons, and other opportunities. I'm still validating the idea before launching the MVP. If you were me, what would you focus on over the next 6 months to make this a startup investors would take seriously? And we'll touch on another thing after this, but let's hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So still validating the idea before MVP. Um, what would you focus on the next 6 months? Making it the best product possible, right? And also paying attention as you're building it and as you're moving it forward of what is also coming on board. What are the competitors that are out there? Basically, just do an entire analysis of what you're trying to do, and then start to build what the product is to there. Yeah, I would also ask, what is it over the next? Why are you saying it the next 6 months? Is that the length of time it's going to build out the product that you're doing? Things are changing so quickly right now, where you need to make sure that what you're doing today is going to be able to evolve as you move and progress with the product too. 6 months is is a long cycle these days. So yeah.
Yeah, I just want to touch on so Dr. Baxter is kind of like, saying, I assure you there are enough hours in the day to focus on school and build a website. And it's true. And I want to stress that if the time that you have to do that in the day, work on, your own professional ambitions or your own company, startup, whatever it is only 15 minutes because you've got priorities in school and learning and growing and building incredible relationships. That's like one of the most important things about being in like any school situation is the friends that you make. And it's kind of silly, the friendships along the way, that's no, but that's like so incredibly invaluable. Your
Mm-hmm.
professors, your teachers, other students, these people could be, the people that are your advisors, potential investor, people who are introducing you to customers. They could be your co-founders, any number of things, right? And it might not be today, it might be 10 years down the road. Like I cannot like, Blake, I'm sure you got stories about this of people you've met like at college that you work with that you keep up with and suddenly like, 13 years later you're like, "Oh, hey, I'd love for you to come help me with this." Or, "Hey, this guy just ring me up and he's like, oh, this is a great opportunity for you." And we never really did anything like that. It's just like, happened, right? Yeah.
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 I mean, a perfect example of that is my business partner, right, and co-founder for IEL. Right, we went to middle school and high school together. Lost contact because going back to Facebook. We graduated before Facebook and even landlines were still even a thing, right? And yeah, when we reconnected, we were talking about what we were up to, and that's what it was. Or this past weekend for July 4th was around a ton of college friends. Half are attorneys and half are doing XYZ, right? So like one guy, he has this huge college application and testing, standardized testing, for like very, very well accomplished there. Um, and yeah, like a bunch of friends or their kids are going on that journey into college, and half of them are his clients too, right? And also, it's situations where yeah, he just helps out with here's some random advice because of that is along the way as well. Or another example is I was at one of Brian's events, right? A couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago, there was a guy there. He's a IP attorney, and going through stuff. He's like, "Oh, I'm working on this, blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, is it this person's company?" And he's like, "How do you know them?" Well, I'm like, "Oh, I've known them for 4 or 5 years now." And starts talking through, and then all of a sudden we realize that we like have all these various connections and things like that, and it becomes synergistic, right? And so people want to work with the people that they can trust, and also they can go back to and have conversations around stuff. And it's interesting in that regard. So network is really important. Gary, we talked about your journey too, where growing up where we both essentially grew up. When you wanted to do something, right, for you want to be a professional photographer, and suddenly you talk to a friend whose father is a professional photographer and shows you the ropes, and you're a professional when you're 16 years old. So yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. And again, like big reason
I
why I
know
do
that's a
what we
short
do.
version, but a
Yeah,
lot more.
yeah, close enough. But the
You
main
hustle
thing,
your ass.
yeah, the
So
main thing is just, again, like the value of relationships trumps everything else. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, it doesn't matter how knowledgeable you are, how experienced you are, any of that. Like the most important thing is like the relationships because that's what's going to, again, endear you to others where they want to see you succeed and they want to do what they can to help you. And being part of your community and being a good person and leading with authenticity and recognizing that everyone else is another human being. It's not only about you. And the more humility you show, the more gratitude you show towards other, the more patience you show towards other, the more you truly want to kind of like play a role in just the littlest way of just helping someone, the more you're going to see amazing things come your way. It might not be immediately, it might not be, next couple of years, it might be like, 10 years down the road, but amazing things will happen. And along the way too, you'll just be living a much more enjoyable, stress-free, fun, fulfilling life than if you're focused entirely obsessively on just your ambitions and trying to make that like, your core of existence, or you're just like only doing that. It's like it's gross. Dr.
yeah,
Baxter brings up a
I
oh
I
yeah.
do want to say on this as well because I think it's kind of important as well. showing up with authenticity is so important around it, right? And also showing up and being consistent with that too. Because if you're not doing that, like there's been multiple times where someone will come to, one of your lunches, Gary, right? And they're expecting to get an output immediately, right? And they never show up again. They're like, oh, that wasn't it, right? I've also seen people who come extremely like, I don't know what I'm gonna get myself into. And then they show, and like in the very beginning, they don't know anyone. And all of a sudden 3-4 months down the line, because it's once a month, and they've gone to the happy hours too, right? All of a sudden they are engaged with a ton of people, right? And they know, and suddenly they're friends and stuff, right? Even at Brian's event, there was a couple people there, and like even the first event that I went to at Brian's, I was this wine thing, right? Didn't know many people, but Brian makes you feel at home, right? So the hosts are also very important too. Engage with the hosts; they know who to invite and engage you with as well. And yes, it's a little bit awkward at first, but just dive into it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to highlight to everyone that's like, tuning in. So Dr. Paxmore asked about the last two actually. Does your product rely on an LLM subscription? And I think everyone needs to be aware of this and recognize the concern if you are building a product, an MVP, on top of another LLM and the subscription that they're providing to you. Because Dr. Passmore says LLMs are going to stop being accessible to non-enterprise users at some point, and then you'll need to rely on local LLMs much weaker or inaccessibly priced enterprise plans. And this is something like, we're already starting to seeing, and a lot of companies are being surprised by is the sudden pricing changes and the limitations on what their subscriptions are giving them access to, as some of these like other LM providers who rely almost solely on the LLMs to make money are needing to start generating revenue, either to get another fundraising round or to have a stopgap by generating more revenue so they have more time to start figuring out what their actual business model is and how they're going to be sustainable versus just fundraising, 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 fundraising. And there
well,
are,
the
yeah,
example right I use right is this, because like metrics is just really important around it, right? Is that a $200 subscription model that you're currently doing right now? I'm not going to say what company it is. You're able to get about $1,500 to $3,000 worth of output from that, right? That's everything is being subsidized right now, right? And so being able to move and understand what that looks like, right? Or in layman's context terms, to even closer to today, right? What used to be a $10 Uber ride is now considerably a lot more than that, right? Because it was being subsidized so that they could get market share, which right now it's in quote unquote arms race to get market share out there and be, the leading XYZ, platform out there.
yes, yes. So good insights, good things to pay attention to. All right, so Peter Kapik, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Over here at Startmata. Hi Blake, I'm building Unity Care Link in quarter. It's sorry, uh, sorry. Unity Care Link is coordination infrastructure for people navigating hard systems, disability services, recovery, homelessness, crisis. Every time someone moves between providers, they often lose their entire care history and have to start over. We call it the reset. Unity CareLink gives people a permanent portable care record that's always free for them, while the organizations serving them get better tools to coordinate. How can I get funded? I'm looking into organizations to sponsor us. We are not going the nonprofit route for many reasons. Have a great business structure as is. Thank you.
Yeah, like I would say, like if you have the great business structure, is that meaning that you have traction and everything like that? I would. It really comes down to kind of like where you are. I know Gary, we're running out of time. Yeah, yeah. So what I would say, right, is that like where's the current product? Where is it at right now? Right? What's the validation that is out there? What users and what medical groups and insurance groups or whatever it is, single pay providers, whatever kind of whatever, however you're like working with them overall. Also, when you are kind of getting into this realm, there's going to be a lot of sort of like public funds, grants, right, subsidies, etc. That in tax credits that get involved. So make sure that you're able to accomplish those or you're able to capture those as it works for you. And how it can get funded. Yeah, I mean, that all depends on what your network is, you know? So you need to make sure that you have a very solid plan that you can get in front of investors that makes it look like, a company that is going to be sustainable, that's going to grow, and give the output and the impact that they're looking for around it. I think there's a lot more details around it, and yeah. Yeah, organizations to sponsor you guys. Again, it just really comes down to where the product is, and when you're going to go after those organizations to understand, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I'm looking at
A lot more information coming
yeah,
through.
extra comments. So yeah, Peter added, we're in development stage and building the community. App launches in August. And then Dr. Paxmore had a question about where the documentation is housed, who owns it. Peter says that they do on a safe server. Um, this too kind of touches on a couple of things, because we had a couple questions so far about, hey, how do I fundraise? How do I find investors? I'm curious, Blake, in your opinion, and my opinion, because we talk about this often too, but it's good to everyone hear this. Like, when does it make sense to actually go after investors versus knowing when to hold back and focus on building the real business first? And
Yeah,
when are you too soon? And when you are too soon, what risk comes with that when you're chasing after investors?
yeah. Everything is going to require time, effort, and energy, right? And so it's understanding where you want to put that time, effort, and energy into. A lot of people think that, okay, here created a startup and they're looking back historically of what other companies have done too. And if they go down the wrong rabbit hole, right, they think like, okay, I need to do a friends and family round immediately of $100,000 or whatever it is, or $500,000, etc. That's the next phase on this, right? And then you go show them, you say, hey, this is the idea. If you are in a scenario where that works, great, wonderful, right? I would say is that the goal is always to, um, what can you do without doing any fundraising, right? That still accelerates and gets you to the objective that you're looking to do, right? And that can mean so many different things across the board. So it's just kind of like analyzing where you are at, analyzing what your needs are, right? What is that money going to do? Is it just going to give you some relief, but you don't have that trajectory to getting revenues that then take over what that funding might be, right? Is it going to be a funding round that you need a funding round and then another funding round, et cetera? Because then that is what some there are many companies that are out there that are doing that, right? And they're doing that to then get to a equilibrium state where they're having the revenues that support that. Kind of even goes back to some of these LLM models that are the online LLM models that are out there. Um, so yeah, I think across the board is that essentially you need to look within yourself and understand why you're doing the fundraising, right? What is it going to accomplish, right? And how is it going to actually get you to the objectives that you're looking for in general?
Yeah, Peter
Because there's
added.
no perfect situation either. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah. But yeah, again, like it's so important, like you've been touching on and with so many of your answers and advice, is that you need to take the time to properly contextualize everything and account for all the different factors as they're working towards, your personal, ambitions, but also the goals of the business and where the product is and all these other things. And Peter says, this is for a really good cause and will help many people struggling in these hard systems. It's it's difficult for them to see it because it's never been done before. So this is like a huge challenge that most founders have, especially early stage founders who haven't done this a lot. Being able to properly communicate and demonstrate their product, their services in the context of the hands of the people that are required for the business to be successful. And that could be like, like a two-sided marketplace, buyers and sellers. And in this case, it's healthcare providers, it's the patients, and who knows how many other stakeholders are required for this thing to work. But, you need to be able to demonstrate this in, not theory and words and illustrations itself, but with your actual product and showing like, you know, the user flow of this and how people are going to experience this. Like as an investor, as a founder, what have you found? Like, you know, I know, sorry, we're a little bit over time, but
No good.
yeah, like, you know, in your experience, how have you found your ability to better communicate to investors as a founder to get them on board to understand exactly what you're trying to do, who it's for, and how it impacts them? And as an investor at the same time, you know, what are you looking for? What's the key bits of information or the storytelling of, you know, the persuasive argument that is really allowing you to have that deeper understanding of what this would do in the marketplace and how it'd be functional, and then also, yeah, actually help people and create value through the benefits.
Yeah. One thing that I think that a lot of people really have to clue in on, right, is that what is that investor and what are they looking at? And I'll just be honest, is that they're looking for a multiple on their investment. That's it at the end of the day. Even if, there's bleeding heart that's around it of like, oh, I want to do this because, my XYZ person in my life has been, hurt by this and it's been difficult, or I experienced this myself, etc. Right? If there's no impact, that's value that literally can equate dollars, right? And saving time, which is also, dollars as well. How are you going to make money is going to be the thing that they're looking at the very end of the day. Maybe not the initial investors because it's friends and family, right? Not angels, but just friends and family that are out there where they're trusting you to be able to accomplish and do the certain things. But if it comes down to, just what are you doing? Where is it going? It's going to be, if the company can make money and multitudes of money, right, and be a scalable, expandable, growth-based business. That's really it at the end of the day.
Where does risk assessment come into play as an investor? If you got two deals that are promising, like, you know, hey, we're both going to give you 100x, right? Like, and you only have so much money to a lot to like the deals that you do and like a period, right? As a VC or like as an angel or whatever, right? Like, how are you choosing which one is the right deal?
Yeah. I mean, what you're looking at of the right deal, right? So we don't do a lot of angel stuff or friends and family rounds and stuff like that. But what I would say is just like, again, what has the ability, right? Knowing the understanding and the knowledge base that I have. And also, if you are that type of investor, leaning on the experts that are around you and being able to share the deal. This happens to me on a regular basis. Happened a couple weeks ago. Someone actually shot over a deal and the deal was just broken, actually, right? What the numbers were saying were wrong. And I said that this was a red flag. Also, kind of like the timeline, like there were just all these like red flags throughout the whole thing. Where even if it, and the funny thing is that I actually had been a participant, I guess, at this company. I've like used the product essentially, and I think that it's great. And I'm like, this is crazy, crazy good, right? And then when I saw this on the business side of it, I was like, it's just broken, right? It doesn't work. And so when it comes down to things in that sense, right, is that you can get people on the hook and they're ready to do it. And you need everything lined up, documentation. We've gone back to a few times on this, this whole time. But what it comes down to is that, like for my investment side, for our investment group, what we look at is that, can we get it into a company? Can we scale it through our network on a global scale? And does this company have the ability to go public too? Right? Doesn't necessarily mean that it will go public because it might be acquired or something else like that. But it is the entire growth life cycle of that company, and does it exist and how does it work? Right? And we don't look at it sort of like, what can we exploit? What can we extract? We look at it as like, what can we do and fix the systems that are involved in it currently to make it that much more efficient across the board.
Appreciate the insights for sure.
Yeah.
Peter's
You got
saying,
to jump though.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. There's some like, yeah, but don't worry. Hopefully, Peter, that was helpful, and yeah, we'll see you soon, and I appreciate you, yeah, going a little bit over with us, and yeah, so grateful.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to share with the community before jumping?
Sure. Yeah. As always, just want to thank everyone. The community is so important. And overall, I think just summarizing some of the things is that get things to a place where it can be contextually observed and discussed with whomever is on your team or to potential investors that are around. Right, make it as strong and as beneficial as possible. And with that, when it comes down to investment, when it comes down to all these things, there's so many variables that are out there. There's not just like one use case for it. You have to be able to build and deploy. And what I always say is that don't don't stop at the train stations. Right, you want to continually go and add various cars to it along the way. And when someone sees you, right, and they see you again in a month, whether that's investor or just potential client, whatever it is, or 2 months or a year, whatever that looks like, you've accomplished so much in that cycle, in that system, that they feel that they're left out. So give them some FOMO, right? And hopefully, whatever you're doing is successful. Yeah.
I love it. You're awesome. Okay,
Thanks,
so
bud.
yeah, thank you everyone. This was wonderful. We'll catch you again next month, Blake, and hopefully sooner in person.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
awesome. All
Cool.
right.
See y'all.
Yep,
Take
take
care.
care, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful questions and dialogues. All right, take care.